Pipeline the Surf Coaster is a new for 2023 roller coaster at SeaWorld Orlando, and is the first stand-up coaster built since Georgia Scorcher in 1999. With some new gimmicks to the genre, does this coaster overcome some of the limitations of the original stand-ups? And is it an enjoyable ride? Find out in this review. Stand-up roller coasters were made by 3 different companies, B&M, Intamin, and Togo. Of those built, only 8 remain in operation, with only Togo and B&M versions running stand-up trains, as the Intamin version has been converted to sit-down seating. From a roller coaster tycoon standpoint, the B&M and Intamin models would be the Hyper Twist coasters, and the Togo model is what the regular stand-up coaster was based off of. For B&M, only 4 of their stand-up coasters remain, with 4 additional stand-up models still running, but with floorless seats. The idea behind stand-up coasters was that they offer a unique riding experience, but many riders get frustrated with the bike seat and the unique forces during the ride. This, combined with the airtime limitations of the standing position, which requires the coaster to just be not as big as other coasters, made it difficult to promote these types of rides, until SeaWorld Orlando debuted Pipeline. The last stand-up coaster built is the Georgia Scorcher, which was built in 1999. Other stand-up coasters have been relocated since, but all were originally built before the Georgia Scorcher. Personally, I enjoy the novel riding position of stand-ups, and the various inversions and elements that Georgia Scorcher had were fun for me. People complain about the seats, but I found adjusting them not too difficult as long as you make sure to be in a solid standing position. On Pipeline, the seats are different as they have a more forgiving restraint, as well as the fact that they will give once locked, particularly so that you can get thrown upwards to get some airtime on the various hills. This makes it much less important to focus on standing in a comfortable position, but as long as you're standing, you should be good for riding Pipeline. Dispatches on this coaster, however, will still be slow. With only 2 across seating, the capacity per train isn't good, and many guests will need to put loose articles to the side or otherwise struggle with seating. And the ride operators will have to make 2 passes to check everything is correct. This is also the only SeaWorld coaster where they yelled at me for using my hand mount for my GoPro, as the ride operator required that GoPros be either chest mounted or wrist mounted during the ride. So it was me that delayed the dispatch of one of my trains, as I couldn't get my GoPro attached correctly to my wrist. Given its slow dispatches, you will likely want to ride this coaster sooner rather than later. Given its awkward ride experience, this is not a must-ride coaster for many guests, and the high height requirement makes it not accessible for families with younger children. The placement by the front of the park helps guests see it, but it is actually kind of awkward to access, especially if the loop around the lake is not open, as it was closed for Howl-O-Scream during my most recent visit. I rode this coaster after getting a few rides rope dropping Penguin Trek, and there was about a 2 train wait on both my rides. It is still excluded from the Platinum single-use quick queues, so it can be difficult to ride if a long line builds up, but you should be fine if you get here within the first 1 or 2 hours of the day. After adjusting your seat and getting checked with a dispatch, you slowly move out of the station onto a launch. The launch is not too punchy. I was hopeful it would feel really different in that standing position, but other than a mild kick, doesn't do a whole lot as a launch for me. There is a small bunny hill after the launch that gives you the first taste of how the airtime on this coaster works. Since the seats bounce up and down, the real gimmick of this coaster is that you essentially are pushed up in a jump on the various hills. Some guests, like me, naturally end up jumping into these. Others seem to hold a rigid standing position, but jumping into them is really fun and kind of natural with how the trains work. Then you have a large overbanked turn. This looks really neat off-ride, but doesn't do a lot on-ride. However, it is your first taste of positive G's on this coaster. For those who have watched my other coaster reviews, I'm not a fan of strong positive G's on a coaster, as it can easily mess with my head. Even Roadrunner Express at Six Flags Fiesta Texas can aggravate a headache if I'm already starting to get one from the bigger coasters. I'm not sure if it's just the layout of this coaster or the standing position, but the positive G's really hurt me on this coaster. After the overbank, you have a valley which are always where you're going to find those positive G's, followed by a great S-bend that really lets you feel the airtime this coaster offers at the top of this hill. It is a simple touch of forces, but my favorite moment on the ride as the strongest that you will get to feel this type of airtime. This is followed by an inversion that looks pretty cool off-ride, but really doesn't do a lot on-ride. The forces, especially as you jostle around a bit with the seating style, are a bit much for me on an inversion, and this would likely be a better coaster without this element, in my opinion, but that's also true for me for many inversions on most coasters. Then you turn to the right and go up a hill. It levels off at the top, but you still get good airtime before turning into a downward helix that is strong on them positive G's. The next turn offers a minor let-up of some of the more uncomfortable forces, followed by a neat little airtime hill that is profiled a bit weird as it is more of an S-bend. It does give nice airtime, though likely could give you just a little bit more. Next, you slam into a helix that goes a bit upwards at the start, so it isn't quite as strong in the positive G's, until later on. Then you flow into an S-hill that gives good airtime over the top, but some forces on the turns into and out of the hill. Mercifully, you have one final turn before heading into the final breakouts. Overall, how good is Pipeline the Surf Coaster? The airtime gimmick is fantastic, as being in a seat that is pushed upwards on various hills is a wonderful feeling on any coaster. However, the positive G's and pressure that I felt in the various valleys on this coaster really messed with my head, making the ride not that enjoyable. I did not have this problem with Georgia Scorcher, so I'm not sure if I just got bad rides on Pipeline or otherwise I was just overly sensitive to positive G's when I rode it, which can happen to me from time to time. This creates a weird mix on this coaster where there are some absolutely excellent elements and others that really hurt me. So I kind of split the difference in my rankings and place it right above solid family coasters in my rankings. If I could enjoy the turns and the whole course of this coaster, it would easily be higher, as that airtime is something truly special. I rank Pipeline right above Joker at Six Flags Over Texas. S&S free spins are a nice gimmick with their flipping, but they just don't offer anything extra special for me. I place it right below Ipanema Skate Ride at Vin Wonder's Fuquoka. This coaster offered little spinning on my rides, but just the shuttle back and forth nature offered really awesome forces on the top of the spikes, making for a rather enjoyable coaster experience. Are you able to enjoy Pipeline the Surf Coaster? Do you feel this coaster does something really well? Let me know. And as always, Kapkun Krap.